Hello, everyone, and welcome to the season finale of Monday Night Travel with Rick Steves Europe. My name is Gabe Gunnink, and I have the privilege of serving as your host this evening. And I am excited to spend this final summer episode with all of you and my dear friend, Lisa Friend. The past couple of weeks, we have encouraged all of you to send your personal 2025 mini trip reports to us, and we have those to share during tonight's show. So I think we will be kind of pausing between festivals to share some travel updates from you all. So thank you to those who's submitted those. And at the very end of tonight's show, it's your last opportunity to complete our summer survey. We read those carefully and we use them to prepare for future seasons, future episodes. So we appreciate those of you that take time to read through those. I am going to share our first couple trip reports from some of our Monday Night Travel community. So we do have a couple updates from Portugal this evening. One is from Dale, who wrote in to recommend the city of Tomar, which is a quiet river town between Lisbon and Porto. Dale said that he had the opportunity to stay there, and it provides a nice alternative to the big cities and boasts a castle that serves as the Portuguese headquarters of the Knights Templar. We also heard from Monique, who spent some time in Lisbon and Porto. So Monique said that she perused the flea market in Lisbon, but she knew from the Rick Steves Europe Portugal guidebook only to buy them from antique dealers to make sure that they're authentic and weren't stolen from existing buildings. So thank you, Monique, for being a careful reader. Monique also offered this reflection that I love from her experience in Porto. This is in reference to the photo there on the right. Monique said, "In the early morning, I followed these three police officers into a hidden, unmarked little cafe that I had not noticed before. It was exactly the kind of place Rick would like. Tiny, old school, with grandma and grandpa behind the counter, locals standing at the counter with their coffee and pastry, no English to be heard. I stood there, politely waiting to be served. When grandma finally made eye contact with me, I used my best Portuguese to order and was accepted as a customer. I left successful, nervous, yet exhilarated, like I was back on my first backpacking trip in 1999 when this is how it was. I miss the days of the language barrier, when you had to make an effort to decipher a menu or order." Thank you, Monique, for sharing that experience of traveling like a local, finding back doors, following locals through into backdoor destinations. And I agree, having just traveled in France myself as somebody that is only has a very rudimentary command of the French language, if you go in with a sense of humility and adventure, having that language barrier can actually be very fun and stimulating, I find. So thank you to Dale and Monique for sharing those Portuguese reflections. We will have more reflections very soon. But for now, I am going to welcome on my guest in a pinch, the lovely Lisa Friend. Hello, Lisa.
Hello, Gabe. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to join you. 20 minutes ago, I was sitting here in my flip-flops in my shed, and I put on a little hairspray, and this is the way you get on a Monday night when I am normally behind the scenes. So thank you very much. But I'm excited to talk about festivals because I think that they're a wonderful anchor that you can use when you're planning your trip, and the ones that we're going to talk about tonight are stellar.
I absolutely agree. I think that there's certainly a time and a place to sometimes avoid festivals because some of the really large ones, you might not be experiencing the place in kind of its more day-to-day rhythms. But in recent years, I've actually loved anchoring my trip with an event or a festival somewhere where I can meet not just locals, but people from around the world. I just did an athletic competition in France last month, and it's nice to balance the daily sights in some locations with a big happening in another. So
And
we're
you're
going
all
to
there
dive.
with you're
No,
all
no,
there with a group of people to enjoy and experience something together, and that can build a lot of bridges.
I absolutely agree. And we are going to jump right in with our first festival. So, Lisa, we are going to get started with some Carnival celebrations.
While Christians have celebrated Easter since ancient times, the festival itself actually has pre-Christian roots. And it's no coincidence that it happens at the start of spring. Like Christmas replaced the pagan festival of Saturn in the dead of winter, Easter likely replaced the celebration of Ostra, a pagan goddess of spring. It was a time of renewal, birth, and fertility.
Imagine the bleakness of winter in ancient and medieval times, the despair, the short days and long nights, barren fields, the hunger, and the cold. Imagine the need for a promise that summer will return, and the joy when finally the fields spring to life and once again bear fruit. Imagine also the comfort in knowing that God, or the gods, had not abandoned you and your family. Rituals, whether Christian or pagan, gave people hope, reminding them that the darkness of winter is always followed by life-giving spring.
The church wisely adapted the pagan seasonal calendar to fit the story it wanted to tell. It rebranded this winter season of scarcity as a time of purification for Christians and called it Lent. But before the deprivation of Lent, there was a rowdy period of anything goes. And this hedonistic fling is Carnival.
Perhaps the most famous European carnival festivals are in Venice. Venice, in the quiet of winter, lives up to its early name, La Serenissima, the Serene Republic. Visitors at this time of year bundle up and enjoy the city's chilly embrace. And each winter, Carnival casts a spell on Venetians and visitors alike. Following a tradition that originated in the 13th century, the city slips behind a mask of anonymity as Venetians promenade, pose, and pretend they're someone they're not. Authority is challenged, rules are broken. The goal? To indulge in everything that'll be forbidden in Lent. An elegant disguise is both transformative and liberating. But it's the mask, so symbolic of this enigmatic city, which feels like a cloak of invisibility. While the original 13th century masks had symbolic functions, today's costumes are more fanciful. While they all give a nod to tradition, many are more contemporary and colorful. Though the masks may have changed, the pleasurable appeal of anonymity has not. As dusk falls, the back streets come alive with strangers. Now, as then, decadence rules the night. Like going anywhere else in Venice, getting to a carnival party often involves a vaporetto ride, walking through narrow streets, and crossing over canals on bridges. These Venetians have been gathering together to enjoy Carnival for 25 years. And just as generations of Venetians have for hundreds of years, they enjoy the privacy and comfort of an elegant palazzo. It's a time when friends take a break from the stresses of their composed, controlled lives to let a little fun and fantasy take over. In another palazzo off the Grand Canal, guests enter into a surreal world that could have been lifted right out of the 16th century.
Welcome, dear guests. Welcome, all my friends.
Behind their masks, people from bankers to bakers are equal. Tonight, no one knows who's who, and reality seems a distant dream. As it was centuries ago, what happens in Venice stays in Venice.
Lisa, I'm going to pause here for just a second because you correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that you've spent Carnevale in Venice, but I know that you've led tour groups in Venice before. And I know that sometimes some of our tour groups are able to see kind of demonstrations for the mask making. Is that something that you've ever been able to do?
Yes, Gabe, many, 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 many times. We take our groups to a mask making demonstration with a charming man named Amit, who I have learned so many Venetian words from because we translate what he's saying, but sometimes he slips into Venetian dialect. And you have to understand, I'm going to go off on a tiny tangent, is that Italy's only been a country since the late 1800s, and before that it was different principalities and belonged to France and belonged to Spain. But there are so many different dialects all along the Italian peninsula that if you get somebody from Sicily and somebody from Venice speaking their dialects, they will not be able to understand each other. So Amit brings some Venetian quality of life into our groups, but he teaches us in about a 45-minute demonstration how to make the beautiful masks. From everything starts from papier-mâché, and then you can add crystals, or you can add wires, you can add a special varnish, a crackly varnish that makes it look like aged porcelain. And he shows us all of these wonderful tricks of the trade, and then he talks to us about Carnevale and Casanova and the playwright Carlo Goldoni. And so he talks to us a lot about what the life was like during the heyday of the masked balls and Carnevale, when Venice was Europe's Sin City. So he talks to us a lot about that. And then for a lot of fun, he makes the gentlemen line up, and he uses all of them with masks and hats and walking sticks, and he gives them all the characters of the Commedia dell'arte by Goldoni, and it's so much fun.
Well, it's just amazing to see the artisans of Europe and all of these crafts that have been going on for centuries and centuries. Do you know, sorry to put you on the spot, Lisa. Do you know how much a Venetian mask might cost in Venice? I know that you usually have your eye on those sorts of things.
Well, it depends a lot, and it depends on the materials and the time it makes, so how intricate they get. So some of the ones that Amit sells are like 150 euros, 250 euros. I mean, I've seen one that was this wide with ostrich feathers and crystals. But I would say that if you wanted a good quality mask that was made actually in Venice and wasn't an import from somewhere else, I'd say you're probably going to need to spend a minimum of probably 50 to 65 euros for something simple.
Well, thank you for that very helpful information, Lisa. I love having a knowledgeable guide like you that has all this information in their back pocket. And we are going to head on now to another Carnival celebration where people dress up quite differently. Let's continue.
To get a better sense of the pagan roots of Carnival, we head to Slovenia. For centuries, the Alps have sheltered these high, isolated villages from the influences of distant cities. Tiny communities like Dresnica have preserved ancient pagan traditions, even as they've embraced Christianity. The festivities begin as night falls. Anticipating what's ahead, villagers retreat indoors, leaving the streets deserted. At the stroke of midnight, the streetlights are turned off and darkness swallows the village. Village bachelors carrying fiery torches sing a romantic song about the moon. Their song erupts into a cacophony as they begin marching through the streets. As they parade noisily through the village, their clanging and banging announces that Carnival has arrived. Before sunrise, the bachelors gather at the local pub, where they transform into an ancient cast of characters come to life in this centuries-old celebration. The young men cajole each other as they get into character. as is done each year, a smoldering fire is lit in a wooden wagon. The smoke evokes a pagan scene around the animal-skinned men called the Ugly Ones. The procession's somber leader sets the pace, followed by the accordionist playing the town's carnival polka. The bachelors who wear fluttering ribbons are the beautiful ones. The parade is a cast of traditional characters, such as the doctor and a gypsy who offers to repair the town's tools. The old couple represents the village elders. The lottery wagon suggests everyone's a winner, followed by an odd character called the Lucky One, carrying a rooster that'll be raffled off. The wild card cop brings up the rear. Disguised by masks they carved themselves, the trailing Ugly Ones make a racket with huge bells to scare off winter and its evil spirits. They move alongside the devil, keeping a watchful eye out for boys they'll later chase. The beautiful ones eventually separate from the others, stopping to knock at every door in the village. When the homeowner greets them, an animated debate ensues.
Ne. Žádnou dia, pohlejte. Kde se Matěj zadňo?
Včera.
A víš, dáme sobli.
Já mám šempádu tu potom.
Eventually, they're invited in. Once inside, music is played, and toasts are made to good health and a good harvest. Back on the streets, the Ugly Ones are hunting for teenage boys who one day will become ugly ones themselves. When caught, the boys are whacked with messy ashes. Humiliated boys dream of the day when they'll be initiated and become chasers themselves. The cop attempts to maintain order, but apparently wants this part of the tradition to remain a secret. Slovenian carnival traditions survive beyond the mountain villages, and the country's deep pagan roots thrive in towns like Ptuj. And this is the undisputed carnival capital of Slovenia. On the Saturday before Ash Wednesday, Ptuj throws a huge party called Kurentovanje. The stars of the show are shaggy monsters called kurents, fun-loving Slavic gods of hedonism, sort of the Slovenian Bacchus. Carnival spirit is in the air, and men and boys help one another with their heavy sheepskin costumes. The boys are proud to be part of this once secret brotherhood. Their outfits can weigh 40 pounds, which, with the addition of heavy metal bells and handmade masks, transform the wearer into a scary current. The woolly mob rattles and clangs its way from door to door to chase away evil spirits and frighten off winter. Eventually, the homeowner relents and comes out to meet them. To quell the clamoring mob, the homeowner offers the head current a sausage and a few cups of wine for the gang. They all swing their hips loudly with satisfaction. This ritual is a remnant of the distant past when families were persuaded to share food during hard times. Another band of characters roams from house to house. It's a group of plowmen pulling a colorful wagon decked out in ribbons representing fertility and the coming of spring. The homeowner is asked for permission to plow for the big turnip. The plowmen then drag the fanciful plow behind men dressed as horses. This wakes up the soil in preparation for a season of bountiful crops. The cracking whips announce the procession. After the symbolic plowing and sowing, the homeowner offers eggs and a sausage and wishes the merry band good health and a good harvest. The festival is capped with a grand parade. Thousands of visitors line the route. Groups of villagers from near and far display whatever symbolizes their trade or tradition. The snap of whips keeps the noise level up to ensure winter stays at bay. The noisy highlight is the pack of 300 currents stomping through the streets. Different villages have unique styles, but they all swing their hips to get their bells clanging as loudly as possible as they sweep up young women in the crowd in a woolly embrace to usher in the spring.
Gabe, that was wonderful. I probably would make some educated corrections to that. They said the farmer gives them cups of wine, but I am convinced that at some point in Carnival in Slovenia, there is the delectable Slivovitz, which is like a plum schnapps or plum brandy that our friends Tina and Sasha bring when they come to visit. And that is, well, in the Dolomites, they call it diesel because it's that kind of fiery fuel. So I'm sure that some of those men have been fueled by Slivovitz. But have you been to Carnival yourself, Gabe?
I actually have. I mean, we need to remember that we should do a research trip to Slovenia for Carnival next year to find out exactly what they drink. Purely educational, of course, and we'll report back. But I was in Europe for Carnival, not in Slovenia or Venice, but when I studied abroad in Spain, in the city of Oviedo, that's kind of a hub in the north. It's not really an area where many travelers go, but it has a really large Carnival celebration. It was in February, and I remember it feeling like it was Halloween and the 4th of July all wrapped into one. Everybody was out in the streets in costumes to watch a parade, and then it finished in the main plaza just outside of the cathedral. They have these really elaborate, beautiful, really tall, like 10, 15 foot tall sculptures called Las Fallas. And they set them on, everybody gathers around and they set them on fire. And that's kind of the culmination in lieu of fireworks. They just burn these really elaborate monumental statues. And it's fun to see. Everybody gets in costume. You see everybody from toddlers to, Spanish abuelas all dressed up. And then it gets quite raucous by night, as one could imagine. But certainly, and I mean, this is a great, we talk a lot about off-season travel and how you can enjoy places when there aren't as many travelers. And certainly doing an off-season trip in February or March, you can see a few places kind of in their natural state, just at a time where there aren't many travelers, and then you can choose to be surrounded by a ton of locals and go to a Carnival celebration.
So just for our viewers, it was in Oviedo. Is that right?
Oviedo.
Oviedo?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Oviedo.
In Spain. Fantastic. Well, I think that you have not actually talked enough about your study abroad on Monday Night Travel. I think we could actually do an episode on what it's like to study abroad and live abroad for how long were you? Because I know you did York and Spain. How long were you in Spain?
5 months. Lisa, It's almost like you've been in the Monday Night Travel brainstorming meetings with me where I've suggested we do a show on study, work, and volunteer abroad opportunities.
Oh, maybe I was. But okay, how long were you in York?
4 months. So
those are legit times. I get kind of irritated when I see somebody say, "Oh, I'm doing study abroad in Florence, Italy." And I'm like, "Oh, great. How long will you be there? Because maybe I'll come through." And they're like, "Oh, 2.5 weeks." And I'm like, that's not study abroad. That's
and I will say, I think any length of study abroad is better than none at all. I think that there's certainly a lot you can learn, but to really feel like that temporary local and, I mean, getting to be somewhere and watch the seasons change. I think that's when, you can certainly be somewhere just for a couple days and feel like a temporary local. But if you have an opportunity, whether it's as a student, taking a gap year in retirement, being somewhere and watching the seasons change is really incredible. So highly recommend. And the seasons are changing in this episode, Lisa, because we are moving from spring into some summer festivities, and we're going to move on to one of my personal favorites, the Palio. But before we get to that, I want to share a few more experiences from our Rick Steves travelers. And so let me pull this up here. Here we go. So we heard from a few travelers that had the opportunity to join a Rick Steves Europe tour in 2025. This is Jennifer, who joined our Munich, Salzburg, and Vienna tour. And Jennifer said that her wow moment was the apple strudel cooking class that you do in a cave in Salzburg as part of the Munich, Salzburg, Vienna tour. And Jennifer said that the instructor was actually a local opera student, and she, while they were preparing their strudel, performed an operatic performance of a song from one of Mozart's operas, resounding off the cave. And that is certainly a wow moment I aspire to having, is preparing strudel in a cave while being surrounded by opera. So thank you, Jennifer, for sharing that wow moment. And then we also heard from our friends Glenn and Margaret, who joined the Best of Sicily tour, and they enjoyed walking the slopes of Mount Etna one day, and then the very next day, they were able to observe Mount Etna erupting from a safe distance over in Taormina. And getting to witness that just seems like an incredible experience. And one more for right now. We also heard from Sarah, who went to Tuscany and Venice. And Sarah offered the following advice. She said, "I went to Tuscany in May for about 2 weeks and home-based in San Gimignano, the city of towers. I highly recommend spending at least a week home basing in a village where the majority of tourists are day visitors. It offers a much more intimate experience and can allow the boundary between foreigners and locals to begin to fade." So even if you're not going to be somewhere studying abroad for 5 months, even spending a week in a place and being able to establish that home base can provide a really different travel experience.
I think Rick has always recommended that if people can spend the night, to do that, especially in those super touristy places. Like San Gimignano is great, but it's a really famous town. It has 13 or 14 of its original medieval towers still standing. So it's like the Manhattan of Tuscany. So it gets a lot of people there. Rothenburg, Ober Tauber on Germany's Romantic Road is the same. And honestly, Venice, if you can spend the night in any of those 3 places, what you see at night will be a completely different experience than what you have during the day. And Sarah so beautifully, what did she say? When the lines between tourists and locals start to disappear or fade, she said it much better than I'm doing repeating it, but I really liked that.
So I think as we continue on to the next video, if you all, dear viewers, want to put in the Q&A widget, maybe a place that you've home based for a week-ish, give or take. Maybe share your favorite home base in Europe that you've had, and we would love to review those later. For now, though, we are going to continue on, and we are going to enjoy Il Palio in Siena.
Across Europe, festival traditions go back centuries and are filled with time-honored pageantry and ritual. Entire communities hurl themselves with abandon into the craziness. There's no better example than here in Italy, Siena's Palio.
In this gorgeously preserved Tuscan hill town, the Middle Ages seem to survive in the architecture. Its towering City Hall tower fronts an elegant, shell-shaped main square, Il Campo. While its streets are peaceful, they contain a lively legacy of civic pride and independence. And twice a year, that spirit shows itself in a crazy horse race, as it has for 5 centuries. The city is divided into 17 neighborhoods, or contrada. These are autonomous, competitive, and filled with rivalries. In this densely populated city, most of the year the contrada are almost indistinguishable. One small piazza or street looks much like the next, but as the Palio approaches, the battle lines are drawn. The distinctive flags and colors of each contrada line the neighborhood, showing their namesake mascot. Like turtle, eagle, dragon, and a fierce-looking dolphin. All year long, citizens prepare. Women lovingly stitch vests and banners. Neighborhood fathers coach kids in drumming and flag throwing. Any time of year, if you hear drumming, check it out for a taste of the Palio to come. And twice a year, each July and August, the entire city readies itself as 10 of the 17 neighborhoods, chosen by lottery, prepare for the big race. Its central square, Il Campo, is transformed into a medieval racetrack. Tons of clay are packed atop the cobbles. Padding is added to the treacherous corners. And bleachers and railings are set up in anticipation of the big day. While the horse race lasts only a couple of minutes, for the Sienese, the Palio is a way of life. For many, it's a philosophy. Locals joke that in Siena, you're born, there's the Palio, and then you die. While the jockeys, usually from out of town, are hired hands, the horses are the stars. Each neighborhood gets its horse through a lottery. They're then adopted and showered with love, respected as if special neighborhood citizens. They're groomed and washed and housed in stables right in the city center. In the days leading up to the race, they're frequently paraded through the streets for their admiring fans. As race day approaches, processions break out across the city. Locals belt out passionate good luck choruses. With the waving flags and pounding drums, it all harkens back to the Middle Ages when rituals like these boosted morale before battle. Each contrada marches into Siena's ornate cathedral. The centerpiece of the parade is the actual Palio. That's the famed and treasured banner, lovingly painted and featuring the Virgin Mary to whom the race is dedicated. The church is thronged as all the neighborhoods wave their stirring flags in unison to honor the Palio's procession to the altar. Here it's blessed as the crowd looks upon it reverently. Soon, it'll be awarded to the victorious contrada. With the horses and jockeys chosen and the Palio blessed and waiting for the winner, competing neighborhoods gather for big community dinners that last well into the night. Each banquet is beautifully situated in the heart of the district. It's a multi-generational affair with old-timers, the young, and the very young. There are rousing choruses all cheering their contradas. And little ones, soaking up the centuries-old traditions. Even if I don't fully understand what's happening, the excitement is contagious, and the wine is delightful. I feel privileged to participate in a scene that's changed little over the centuries. On the day of the race, those honored to represent their contrada put on elaborate medieval costumes and armor. This requires many assistants who not only help fit the clothing, but make sure it looks just as it did centuries ago. In full regalia, the contrada then process to the neighborhood church, where there's a colorful flag ceremony. Followed by a full-throated singing of the contrada's hymn. And finally, the traditional blessing of the horse by the priest. Go and return victorious, says the priest. Then, you guessed it, there's another procession, with more drums and flags as each contrada marches through Siena, eventually flowing together at the cathedral, where, before the bishop, they showcase their passion and talents. After all have gathered at the cathedral, there's one last grand parade through the canyon-like streets. With drums thundering, the people crush to join the scene. The town converges on its main square. And then, with what seems like all of Siena packed into the Campo, it's time for the race. Bleacher and balcony seats are expensive, but standing room with the masses in the square is free. A cart pulled by oxen carrying the coveted Palio banner enters. This only increases the crowd's anticipation. Then 10 snorting horses and their nervous riders line up to await the start. The jockeying includes a little last-minute negotiating. It's complicated. Then silence takes over. Once the rope drops, there's one basic rule. There are no rules. They race bareback like crazy while spectators go wild. With non-stop spills and thrills, life in Siena stops for these frantic 3 laps, just about 90 seconds. And Lupa, the she-wolf district wins. When the winner crosses the line, 1/17 of Siena, the prevailing she-wolf neighborhood, goes berserk. Tears of joy flow. People embrace. The jubilation is over the top for both the winners and for the many neighborhoods joyously celebrating their rival Contrada's defeat. The happy horde thunders through the streets and up to the cathedral. Once there, they pack the church, and the winning Contrada receives the coveted Palio. Champions until the next race.
All right, Lisa, I'd love to know which Contrada do you root for?
I'm a little nervous to answer you because I don't want to upset any of my friends who are actually from Siena, but I have to root for the Selva, which means forest, because I'm from a small logging town in Oregon. So if you're gonna have a forest, I'm gonna be rooting for it. And also, I love the fact that its flag is orange and green, but they have a rhinoceros on it, but it's not the rhinoceros, and it's just on the flag. I don't know why. And it won not that long ago. Most recently, it won in 2023. So I'm hoping for a streak. The other thing I would like our viewers to know, if they have a chance to visit Siena and the Palio, is that it actually happens twice a summer. So it always happens once in July and once in August. So you do get 2 chances to see that insane horse race.
And personally, I root for the Chiocciola, which is the snail district. Mostly just because I'm tickled by the idea of the snail being the fastest district. And it has, I did not know this off the top of my head. I looked it up, but they have the second highest number of wins, only behind Oca, which is the goose. But they haven't won yet in the 21st century. So Chiocciola has to hurry up a little bit.
So they might be considered a nonna, a grandmother, if they haven't won for 25 or more years.
Yeah, I think so. I might just need to go myself soon. I'm sure with my cheering, they would be lifted to victory.
All they need is a very tall, blonde, enthusiastic fan such as yourself, and I'm sure zoom on to victory.
I will say I could probably stand in the middle of that crowd and still have a pretty good vantage point. So
you could. I would like to see the Palio someday, but I don't know if it'll ever happen because the thought of being within those ropes in the center, my claustrophobia just says, and I am not as tall as you are, Gabe, so I would probably have a good view of other people's armpits.
Well, we'll find you a nice balcony to look out from. But for now, we are going to continue from one event that I would enjoy watching to another that I would enjoy participating in. So let's go to the Highland Games of Scotland.
Along with ritual and pageantry, some festivals originated with a more practical purpose, to train their men to be fit for battle. Warriors, whether in ancient Greece competing in the Olympics, or clansmen gathering here in Scotland, would go at it on the field.
And today, communities throughout Scotland still host a Highland Games, where kilted athletes from the surrounding countryside gather to show off their speed, strength, and grace. A Highland Games is an all-day celebration of local sport and culture. like a track meet and a county fair rolled into one. It's a fine day out for the family, with a soundtrack of traditional Scottish music and clan pride showing itself in the tartan patterns. The community cheers on the athletes and dancers. The day's events typically kick off with the arrival of a parading pipe band, led by the local clan chieftain. After a lap around the field, the competition begins. In the heavy events, billed as feats of Highland strength, brawny, kilted athletes push their limits. In the weight throw, competitors spin like bulky ballerinas before releasing a heavy ball on a chain. The hammer throw involves a similar technique with an iron ball on a long stick. And the stone put has been adopted in international sports as the shot put. In this event, Highlanders swing a 56-pound weight over a horizontal bar that keeps getting higher and higher. And of course, there's the caber toss. Pick up a giant log, called a caber, get a running start, and release it end over end with enough force to make the caber flip all the way over and land at the 12 o'clock position. Or not. Meanwhile, the track events run circles around all that muscle. The races offer fun for all those attending, including events for the kids. And visitors from faraway lands are welcome to join in as well. Okay, I think I've found my sport. Lifting what's called a manhood stone is a standard part of these games. Brawny lads impress their girls with a show of strength.
Why not? That's good. Thank you.
With a wee glass of courage, competitors lift and carry the 250-pound stone. Or at least give it a good try. I taught this guy everything he knows. There's always a show-off. And it's not all brute strength. Highland dancing shows off both athleticism and grace. With years of practice, young girls dance with an impressive confidence and fluidity. A lone piper accompanies serious wee dancers who toe their routines with intense concentration. Within a few years, they'll likely be dancing with the same mastery as the older girls.
Lisa, I need to know, if you were going to compete in the Highland Games, which event would you choose?
The tug of war, where I could use my lower body strength and heft to the best of my ability.
It's a shame that you were gone last year when we did our Olympics episode and we did a tug of war. I think you were on tour, but maybe it's good for Ben, Emily, and I that you weren't around. We would have been embarrassed.
Well, I think that maybe already people know what you would choose, but there is an activity just custom made for you at the Highland Games, Gabe.
Yeah, I do the most boring sport. I would just do the running in circles. The more circles, the better for me.
I think you would enjoy the cross country where they go out into the fields and the forest and the long distance, because you're a long distance runner.
Yeah, I didn't realize. So I've not been to the Highland Games, so that wasn't in the clip. So I didn't realize that they did longer distances. But you have been to the Highland Games, right, Lisa?
I have been to a couple of them. Yeah, the first one I ever went to was in a town called Cupar, Cupar, and Cupar is not that far from Edinburgh. I actually did it as a day trip. I was traveling by myself, and I was in a pub and talking to this lady, and she's like, well, I gotta go. I gotta get my daughter to the Highland Games, because her daughter was one of those young women that does the dancing. And I said, before you leave, could you tell me a little bit more about that? And she's like, oh yeah, it's in Cupar. And I was like, I got out my phone. I'm like, does Cupar have a train station? Can I get there? And I did. So I didn't ever meet up with her again, but I went out to Cupar the next day and spent the day at the Highland Games. And there were I mean, that was probably 15 years ago, but I think it was me and maybe one other couple that I saw that were American, and it was just very, very local. And I loved it. I loved it so much that when I came back with my family, I said, the one thing we have to do is we have to do a Highland Games. And so we went to one, and I thought it was going to be the same sort of really local, small thing. It was in Ceres, Ceres, and it was much bigger. It was also a great day out, but it was so funny because Gordon Ramsay was there filming a television show. So there were all of these people there and all of these camera crews following him around. And so it was still a great experience, but not quite the local only one that I had wanted. But I would highly recommend, if you're going to be anywhere in Scotland in July or August, you can look up and see who's having, because they're like county fairs. So there's going to be one every weekend somewhere.
And Lisa, did you have to get a ticket to this, or do you just show up?
The one for Cooper, I definitely just walked in. The one in Ceres, I still don't think we paid anything. You know, we paid to go on rides and you know, we ate carnival type food, but I don't think there was an entrance fee. I can't guarantee that that's the same now, but I don't think so. I think you probably have to pay for parking or something.
Very nice. Well, thank you for sharing your Highland Games experience with us. I would love to go sometime, and I'll train up for the cross-country race.
You could crush them, Gabe.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that. Those Scottish folks seem pretty hardy. Before we get on to our final festival, I'm going to share one more round of some of our travelers' trip reports. And also, I should say, after we watch our last video, I've put together a little poll, and we're going to survey our viewers and see which of these festivals they would most want to visit. But for right now, I want to share a few more updates from our travelers. This time, some that have adventured beyond the places that we cover here at Rick Steves Europe. First, this is Dennis and Jim, who were inspired by Cameron's past trip reports and traveled to both the Balkans and Iceland across their last 8-week trip. They also went to Svalbard, which is a territory of Norway, and it has the northernmost settlement in the world, and has a large polar bear population. You can see them posing with the sign there. They said, though, that actually their wow moment was inspired by one of Cameron's Monday Night Travel trip reports. They rode on Tito's Blue Train in Belgrade, Serbia, which is a site that your hotel concierge probably would not know about, but Cameron provided detailed instructions for how you can access it. It was this kind of the Air Force One of Tito, the head of state for the former Yugoslavia, and he would ride around on this blue train. So it was fun to see them putting Cameron's trip report to good use. Then we had some people that went outside of Europe altogether. Adrian celebrated a big birthday in Quebec City and recommends this, quote, slice of Europe in North America for anyone who lives in North America and wants a European-esque escape without flying over an ocean. This has been a place I've been wanting to go to for a few years now. And finally, I think the Monday Night Travelers who have covered the most ground were Colin and Kat. Here's what Colin had to say for their little trip report. Colin says, some highlights from the year include waking up in a floating bungalow in Laos, traveling around Tamil Nadu with a van full of ultra-cool nerds and stuffing ourselves with everything from vadai on the streets of Madurai to cheese from a conveyor belt in London. But the real thing I'm reflecting on is the recent passing of a friend. I didn't agree with him on just about anything, politics, economics, science, but we both shared a fundamental belief in the goodness of people and the importance of travel and learning about others, and we connected over that. So a big thank you to Colin, Kat, and all of our travelers who shared glimpses from their trip. There were many more than we were able to share tonight, but the Monday Night Travel team really enjoyed reading them. We always enjoy learning about new destinations from all of you that get us excited about going to different places, and we are grateful to have all of you in this community. So, with that said, Lisa, we have one more festival to enjoy together this evening.
It's the biggie.
It's the biggie, and I've actually noticed we're progressing through the calendar year with these festivals. And so the fall festival that we'll be enjoying is, of course, Munich's Oktoberfest. So let's grab a pint now.
A pint, ein Maß. A liter.
A liter.
Of Europe's many great festivals, one of the wildest is Oktoberfest here in Munich. Germany's favorite annual beer bash originated about 200 years ago with the wedding reception of King Ludwig I. Ludwig's party was such a hit, they've been celebrating every year since.
Oktoberfest lasts for 2 weeks from late September into October. Filling a huge fairground under a dramatic statue representing Bavaria, locals set up about 16 huge tents that can each seat several thousand beer drinkers. The festivities kick off with grand parades through Munich heading toward the fairgrounds. The queen of the parade is the Münchner Kindl, a young woman wearing a monk's robe, riding the lead horse with her beer stein raised. With thousands of participants, the parade seems endless. You'll see traditional costumes from every corner of Bavarian society. Elaborately decorated horses and wagons, along with keg-filled floats from each of the city's main breweries, entertain the crowds while making their way to the festival grounds. Revelers fill massive tents awaiting the grand opening. After trotting through much of Munich, the parade finally enters the fairgrounds. Dignitaries are formally greeted, and another Oktoberfest begins. From now on, for the next 2 weeks, it's a beer-fueled frenzy of dancing, music, food, and amusements. There's no better place to see Germans at play. The tents are surrounded by a fun forest of amusements. There's a huge Ferris wheel. The 5 Loops roller coaster must be the wildest around. For locals and tourists alike, the rides are unforgettable. And probably best done before you start drinking your beer. Inside the tent, the party rages day and night. Bavarian culture is strong here. Each of the tents has a personality. Some are youthful, some are more traditional. It's a festival of German culture. While there are plenty of tourists, it's really dominated by locals who look forward to this annual chance to celebrate Bavaria and its beer. Fast-moving waitresses hoist armloads of massive glasses. The beers are served in cherished glass mugs, each holding a liter of their favorite local brew. The people watching, Germans letting their hair down, is itself entertaining. It's a slap-happy world of lederhosen, dirndls, fancy hats, and maidens with flowers in their hair. It's a multi-generational blowout, complete with schmaltzy music and lots of new friendships. Rivers of beer are drunk and tons of food are eaten. Radishes, pretzels, lots of sausage, all served by saucy maids. While I was too tipsy to count, locals claim there are 6 million visitors, 7 million liters of beer drunk, 500,000 chicken cooked, and 100 oxen eaten. That's one truly memorable festival.
Oh boy, I love Oktoberfest so much. I've been going most years for the last 25 years. And while I do end up usually going more during the daytime, it's just a scene of happiness.
It really is. I mean, I've only been once. It was in 2019 after I ran the Berlin Marathon. I then went down to Munich, and I was expecting it to be kind of a more of a rowdy party scene, but the group I went with, we had a reservation from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And I thought, how am I going to sit in this tent for 6 hours and just sit and drink beer? I ended up staying until 10 p.m. I was in that tent for 12 hours and it was just so joyful. And I found it to be such a great balance of German people and people visiting internationally to experience it. Have you found that as well, Lisa?
I have. And you know who really loves to come across the border and party with the Germans is the Italians.
Mhm.
Actually, they just announced a night train, an overnight train from Rome to Munich for Oktoberfest this year to get the people there because public drunkenness is seen as a brutta figura in Italy. It's not something you do. You don't want to ever be seen to be out of control that way. Public drunkenness at a tent in Oktoberfest is a bella figura. It is what you're supposed to be, at least cheerful. So they love to come across the Italians and go to Oktoberfest. The other thing I wanted to tell people is you don't have to have a reservation. So a lot of people think that to get into a tent you have to have a reservation, but especially if you go during the daytime or early evening, you just look at the end of the table and see if it's reserved, and you see what time it's reserved, and you can sit there until the reserved time. And the waiters and waitresses are usually pretty good about helping you explain that. But I wanted people to know that there's also a particular part of the fairgrounds now of the festival, and it's called the Ödewiesen. So Wiesen is what the Munich people call the festival because Wiesen means the field. It's where the original party started and where the fairgrounds are now. And so the Ödewiesen is the old Wiesen, and you have to pay like €4 to get in, but they drink the beer in the old ceramic steins. So all the other tents have glass steins, but these are ceramic. They tap the kegs from small wooden barrels, and it's where some of the really prestigious looking people are. So the people who've put a lot of thought into their traditional costumes, their dirndls, the silver, everything, they go and sit there to be admired. And it's just a little bit calmer, and there's always a place to sit there. So I would want all of our viewers to know about that. And the rides are so much fun. I went on the rides for the first time about 3 years ago, right after COVID. I thought, I've been to Oktoberfest, but I've never gone on a ride. And it was so much fun. And again, like Rick says, you do it definitely before the drinking starts. But it's just a nice combination of like county fair, state fair, and what was a marriage celebration. So it's really a lot of fun.
And I've watched this clip several times before, and this was the first time that I noticed that the roller coaster in the video was styled like the Olympic rings.
Yeah, I noticed that the waitresses they're wearing, what do we call those? They're like sweatbands. Is that what we
Oh,
say there?
uh-huh.
Yeah, they're wearing sweatbands on their wrists so that it catches any drips from the beer and doesn't go down their arms. And those people work so hard.
Yes, agreed. Thank you all for celebrating these festivals with us. And Lisa, I would love to know which festival our travelers would most like to visit. So I know that our viewers always like a nice poll. So we are going to give you a chance of the 5 celebrations that we covered this evening. You can vote for which one you would most like to go to in Europe. Again, we have kind of the classic Carnevale in Venice with the masks. We have the more rural and flamboyant Carnival in Slovenia. We have Siena's Palio horse race. We have the Highland Games where you can watch some hardy Scots toss some heavy objects. And of course, we have Munich's Oktoberfest. So take about 10 more seconds. Lisa, if you could only go to one next year, which one would you choose and why?
I would go to the Highland Games because I just like to see big burly men in kilts do things. I'm sorry, that's the honest answer.
I was torn between that, but I might go with Siena's Palio. It just feels so niche and unusual to me, and just seeing everybody crammed in that tiny plaza. I fortunately love crowds, so I'd love to be sandwiched in the middle of that. But let's see what our viewers said. Lisa, it looks like they agree with you. The winner is Scotland's Highland Games with 30%. And then Munich's Oktoberfest with 27.
Close, very close second.
All right, so before we take off for the evening, I do want to remind people we often have our word from our sponsor before our Q&A, and we will not be doing a Q&A tonight, but I do have a quick word from our sponsor. If you really missed hearing from Lucas tonight, he's joined us a couple times before. We know that he is a favorite of many of our viewers. You can hear more from Lucas on the Travel with Rick Steves radio show. And if you miss us over the next 4 weeks while we're on our summer break, this is a great way to get your weekly travel fix. Travel with Rick Steves airs on over 500 public radio stations across the country. There are over 800 episodes, so Monday Night Travel has some catching up to do. We're only at 205. It is also available as a podcast wherever you find your podcasts. If for some reason it is not broadcast in your community. Like Monday Night Travel, the radio show will take detours beyond Europe. And, if you're still doing a summer road trip, it's a great thing to put on while you're driving. So that is the word from our sponsor for this evening. And I would just like to remind you all, again, if you want to join Lisa and I next Wednesday for Tours 101, we would love to see you there. The link is in the chat and will be in tomorrow's follow-up email. Otherwise, we are going to be back on September 15th with Rick to talk about hiking in the Dolomites. And lastly, as you sign off, we would love if you would take a few moments to complete our survey to help us plan future shows. So thank you all again. Lisa, do you have any parting words going into summer?
I would like our viewers to know how very seriously we do take the survey and their feedback, because we value them so highly. We love you, we appreciate you, and we want to make the shows that you want to see. So please help us by filling out the survey. And I will see you in October after I get home from leading some tours. And I will see you then.
All right. Yeah, you're going to be all across Italy, right, Lisa?
I'm going to be all across Europe. I'm going to be in Italy, Croatia, Switzerland, France, Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, maybe the UK.
It might be easier to list the countries you're not going to.
Spain and Portugal, unfortunately.
All right. Well, thank you all once more. Thank you, Lisa, for joining me on short notice. And we look forward to seeing you all on September 15th. Until then, happy summer.